I've always believed that home should be a safe placey refuge from the world. But for the last 5 years, it's felt more like a battlefield. And the general? My stepfather. It started small, as these things always do. The occasional passive-aggressive remark, the disapproving looks, the subtle ways he would remind my brother and me that he wasn't our real dad. But as time passed, his resentment grew into something more insidious, something dangerous. The kitchen was the flashpoint. That night, I walked in to clean up after dinner, only to find a calandaron we used for food overflowing with shit-covered chicken eggs. We raised chickens, and I had already told him 1,000 times that bringing in dirty eggs and leaving them in our kitchen was disgusting. But as usual, he ignored me. Next to it, a frying pan sat filled with rancid oil and chunks of old meat. He had this ridiculous habit of reusing the same oil, letting it sit out for days on end like some medieval plague experiment. I snapped. Maybe it was because this had been going on for years. Maybe it was because I was tired of living in filth. Or maybe deep down it was because I was tired of him. How many times do I have to tell you? This is disgusting. We eat here, I said, barely holding back my rage. He scoffed. Oh, here we go again. Look at you, up on your high horse, acting like you're better than everyone else. You think you're so perfect? Newsflash, kid, you're not. And that was it. That one sentence set off years of built-up resentment. I turned to him, voice shaking with fury. No, you know what? I'm not perfect, but at least I'm not a grown-ass man throwing tantrums every time someone asks him to have basic hygiene. You act like you're the king of this house, but let's be real, you're nothing but a bully. And a coward. His face turned red. He tried to play the victim, as he always did. I sacrificed everything for this family. I worked my ass off to give you and your brother a life, and this is the thanks I get? A little appreciation would go a long way. Appreciation? For what? He's been in my life for 5 years, barely enough time to claim any kind of parental role. And yet, here he was, acting like he single-handedly raised me. You didn't sacrifice anything for us. I shot back. We've been taking care of ourselves for years. I have a full-time job, I pay rent, I buy my own groceries. The only thing you contribute is stress. I thought that would be the end of it, that he would yell a little more, stomp around, and eventually storm off to sulk in his room. But he didn't. Instead, he did something worse. Oh, now I get it. He sneered. This isn't about the kitchen. This is about your girlfriend, isn't it? That little bitch left you and now you're taking it out on me. That's why you're acting like this. My blood turned ice cold. My ex-girlfriend and I broke up months ago. It was painful, sure, but I had made peace with it. Or so I thought. Because the second those words left his mouth, something inside me snapped. I turned slowly to face him, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. Don't talk about her, he smirked, sensing that he had hit a nerve. Oh, struck a chord, did I? Maybe if you weren't such an asshole, she wouldn't have left you. Face it, you're just as much of a failure as your mother. The room went silent. My mother? The woman he had emotionally battered for years. The woman he had threatened to leave 100 times only to come crawling back when he realized he had no one else. And then he did something I never expected. He squared up to me, a grown man, standing chest to chest with a 20-year-old like he was about to start a bar fight. I took a deep breath, tied my hair back, and waited. And just like that, he backed off, called me a putz, a brat. Threw a few more insults my way before storming off and slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, my grandmother called me. He's saying you threatened him, she said, her voice uneasy. I almost laughed. Threatened him? He was the one trying to fight me. I know, sweetheart, but you know how he is. He's already telling people that you're violent. that you have anger issues, that he's afraid to be in the same house as you. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just him throwing a tantrum. This was him trying to turn the family against me. I hung up, my mind racing. What was the end game here? To get me kicked out? To make me look like the villain? Then I realized something chilling. He wasn't planning to leave. All those times he threatened to go? The dramatic exits, the "I'm done" speeches, they were all manipulation tactics. He never intended to leave because he needed this house. He needed us to depend on him. And now that I was pulling away, now that I was seeing through his bullshit, he was trying to flip the script. And that's when I knew. It was time to go. I packed a bag that night. Just the essentials. My brother begged me not to leave. My mom cried, but I could see the resignation in her eyes. She knew this was coming, and then, just as I was about to walk out the door, my stepfather stopped me. "You really gonna leave your family like this?" he said, voice dripping with fake disappointment. I turned to him, a strange sense of calm washing over me. "No," I said, "I'm leaving you." And with that, I walked away. I got my own place the next day. My mom and brother visited often, though they were still trapped in the toxic cycle he had built. I hated leaving them behind, but I also knew I couldn't save them. They had to want to save themselves. Months passed. My stepfather's life started to crumble. He lost his job. His drinking got worse. He alienated everyone around him. And one day, he packed his things and disappeared. Gone. I don't know where he went. I don't care. What I do know is this. I got out, and I never looked back. I, 21F, have been dating my boyfriend, 25M, for almost 3 years. I always believed we had a solid relationship, filled with love, shared laughter, and mutual understanding. But a few days ago, something small, so small, it should have been insignificant, set off a chain of events that has made me question everything. Let me rewind a little. When we first started dating, I had 2 simple ear piercings. That was it. My hair was my natural brown, and I had no tattoos or anything else that would be considered alternative. He, on the other hand, was completely against body modifications of any kind, no piercings, no tattoos, no crazy hair colors. I always found it a bit odd, but at the time, I shrugged it off. People have preferences, right? Fast forward to last year, I decided to dye the bottom half of my hair pink. It wasn't a radical move, just a fun, expressive choice. But his reaction? Absolute meltdown. He got angry, saying that I was changing into someone else, and that he was attracted to the version of me he first met, not this new person I was becoming. We fought about it for weeks, and it was the first time I felt like something was deeply wrong. But in the end, I let it go. I thought maybe I should have considered his feelings more. I told myself that maybe his reaction was just a moment of emotional immaturity. I was wrong. This past weekend, I was on vacation with my little sister for her birthday. It was supposed to be a fun, relaxing time. She had been wanting to get her ears pierced for a while, and she asked if I'd do it with her. Of course, I said yes. It was spontaneous, unplanned, and honestly a sweet moment between us. I got a tiny 2mm diamond stud on both helixes, barely even noticeable. When I got back, I casually mentioned it to my boyfriend over text, expecting nothing more than maybe an eye roll. Instead, I got radio silence. For hours. Then one single text, "Are you serious?" I was confused. I responded, yeah, what's the big deal?" No answer. I called him. He didn't pick up. When he finally did, he sounded furious. He told me that I was being selfish, that I had disrespected his boundaries, and that he couldn't even look at me right now. I thought he was joking at first, but then when we FaceTimed, I realized he was literally holding the camera to the ceiling so I couldn't see his face. I'll let you see me when I'm not mad anymore. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I started really thinking about all the times he had reacted this way. The pink hair. The way he always seemed to criticize the way I dressed if I wore something that didn't fit his taste. The way he would pout and withdraw whenever I did something for myself without consulting him first. I called one of my best friends that night and told her everything. And that's when she said something that hit me like a truck. Has it ever occurred to you that he doesn't love you? He loves control over you. It made me sick to my stomach. But it didn't stop there. The next morning, I decided to snoop something I had never done before, but at this point, my gut was screaming at me that something was off. I went through his old messages on my laptop. Yes, I knew his password, and what I found made my blood run cold. He had been talking to his ex-girlfriend the entire time we'd been together. Not just catching up, no, he was venting to her about me. About how I was changing, how I was ruining myself, and how he missed when he was with someone who was pure and knew how to stay beautiful. One message stood out. She used to be perfect. Now she's trying to be someone she's not. I don't know how much longer I can put up with it. He was planning to leave me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part? She was encouraging him, telling him I was just going through a phase and that he should come back to her once he was done wasting time on me. I waited until we met up in person. He acted like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't been ignoring me for days. I let him talk for a bit and then I dropped the bomb. I know about the messages, I know everything. His face drained of color. He stuttered, tried to come up with excuses, but at that point, I didn't care. I was done. I hope you and your pure ex have a great life together. Goodbye. And just like that, I walked away. I blocked him, deleted our photos, removed every last trace of him from my life. And let me tell you, I never felt freer. It wasn't about the piercing. It was never about the piercing. It was about control. And the second he realized he was losing that control, he showed me who he really was. My husband, 40M, and I, 42F, have been together for 18 years, married for 15. We have one son, 14M. Our life from the outside seemed normal. Happy even, but behind closed doors, our marriage was suffocating under the weight of a dead bedroom, unspoken words, and an intimacy that had faded into oblivion. I wish I could say I never saw it coming, but in a way I did. For context, I have always had sexual trauma from my past. I was assaulted when I was young, and for years I kept it bottled up. When I finally found the courage to speak out, no one believed me. The weight of that betrayal shaped me in ways I couldn't even begin to untangle. It made me afraid of vulnerability, of being wanted. My husband knew all of this when we met. He was my rock, my safe place, my protector. And yet, despite our love, my past haunted our bedroom. Over the years, I became increasingly repressed in my sexuality. We tried therapy, and while it helped us communicate better, it didn't reignite the passion. I started taking medication for my mental health, which only worsened the issue by making me drowsy and killing whatever libido I had left. We stopped trying. He would work long hours as a high school band director, come home exhausted, and neither of us initiated anything. It was an unspoken agreement that turned into an unbreakable pattern. 1 year passed, then 2. Our son grew older and our marriage grew colder. I thought we were both suffering in silence. But I was wrong. One evening, while my husband was in the shower, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have even touched his phone, but something about this felt off. Instinctively, I answered. A woman's voice came through. "I miss you." I felt my stomach drop. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a click. She had hung up. I could barely breathe. My mind raced. Was it spam? A wrong number? A misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew. I knew. I did the thing I always swore I wouldn't do. I opened his phone. There it was. A hidden folder of messages, photos, and videos between him and her. Her name was Lily, 32, a colleague of his from the school. They had been talking for over a year. The messages weren't just sexual, though those were there too. They were intimate. Conversations about how she made him feel alive, about how he wasn't sure what love felt like anymore, how she understood him in a way I never could. A full-blown emotional affair. I wanted to throw up. As I scrolled, I found messages where he vented about me. How I was cold, distant, a shell of the woman he married. How I had let myself go. How he had stayed with me out of obligation, not love. The worst part? He told her about my trauma. The most painful, humiliating part of my past. My deepest wounds. My darkest fears. He told her. I saw red. When he stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around his waist, I was standing there, his phone in my shaking hand. He paled instantly. Who is Lily? I asked, my voice eerily calm. He stammered, sputtered, tried to spin some excuse about it being just a friend, about how I was blowing things out of proportion. But he knew. He knew there was no getting out of this. I threw the phone at him and let it all out. Every ounce of rage, betrayal, heartbreak, I screamed. He begged. He tried to turn it back on me, said I had pushed him into this with my coldness, my lack of intimacy. I almost believed him. But then I remembered. He could have talked to me. He could have tried. Instead, he lied. That night, I slept in my son's room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had become this woman. A woman who was so afraid of losing her husband that she had let her marriage rot. A woman who thought love meant sacrificing herself. I couldn't do it anymore. The next morning, I told him we needed space. He left to stay at a friend's house. He begged for another chance. Therapy. Counseling. He swore he'd cut Lily off. But the damage was done. I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive him. Just when I thought I had seen it all, something even more devastating happened. A few days later, I received an anonymous message on Instagram. It was a screenshot. A conversation between Lily and another woman. Lily had been cheating on him. She was engaged to another man. She had been feeding my husband the same lines she had been feeding someone else. When I confronted him with this, he broke down. He was a wreck. He said he felt like an idiot, that she had played him. I looked at him, the man who had betrayed me, lied to me, humiliated me, and I felt nothing but exhaustion. I wish I had a satisfying ending to this, but I don't. I'm still processing. We are separated, though he's still trying to win me back. Part of me still loves him. Part of me feels like I'll never trust him again. My son knows something is wrong, though I haven't told him the full truth. I don't know what's next, but for the first time in a long time, I know I have the power to decide. I never thought I'd be that person paranoid, second-guessing everything my boyfriend did, scrolling through his social media like a detective hunting for clues. But here I am. And now I can't unsee the red flags that were always there. My boyfriend, Jake, 29M, and I, 27F, have been together for about a year. He's everything I thought I wanted, charming, spontaneous, and always making me laugh. But there was always this unspoken tension when it came to social media. I'd tag him in stories, and he wouldn't repost. I'd post about our trips, and he'd act like they never happened. I brushed it off at first, thinking, maybe he's just private. But when I tagged him in a simple, casual video at a bar, nothing romantic, nothing overly personal, and he only shared it with close friends, I knew something was off. I confronted him about it. He gave me a half-hearted excuse, saying, I never post my relationships. Then, almost as an afterthought, he admitted that his exes had been questioning why he was in my country so often. That was weird. Why did he care what they thought? And if he had already told them he had a girlfriend, why was he so hesitant to show it? I tried to ignore it, but my gut wouldn't let me. Something about the way he said it, the shiftiness in his voice, the hesitation made me dig deeper. I asked him to show me his hide list, just to put my mind at ease. He hesitated. That hesitation alone was an answer. And when he finally caved, I saw her name, Olivia, a girl he supposedly had a thing with last summer. But the issue wasn't just that she was on the hide list, it was the fact that he had followed her after he followed my friends in February, long after we were already together. That meant this wasn't some past fling he had forgotten about. It was recent and deliberate. I asked him why. Why was she hidden? Why was he still following her? Why had he made sure she wouldn't see that we were together? He got defensive, turned it around on me. Why are you checking that? That's controlling. Controlling! Right. Because wanting to know why my boyfriend is hiding another girl from seeing our relationship is controlling. I felt sick. The worst part? I had a birthday trip planned with him in just 3 days. Plane tickets booked, reservations made, everything set. And now I didn't even know if I could look at him the same way. I decided to play it cool. For now. I didn't want to start a war before our trip, but I also didn't want to let this go. So I watched. And I waited. And what I found next made my stomach drop. It wasn't just Olivia. There were others. 3 more names, all hidden from seeing his stories. All girls. Some with flirty comments on his posts from months ago. Some with "miss you" texts buried in his messages. And one girl whose messages he had deleted completely. I knew because I saw a text from his friend referencing something she had said, but her messages were gone, scrubbed clean. The next day, I told him we needed to talk. He rolled his eyes, already annoyed. "You're overthinking again," he sighed. "Number, I'm not." My voice was steady, but inside I was shaking. "You're hiding me. And I want to know why," he scoffed, but I didn't let him interrupt. "You followed Olivia after we got together. You hid multiple girls from your stories. You deleted messages. So, tell me, Jake, am I crazy? Or is there a reason you don't want these girls to see that you're in a relationship?" His face paled. For the first time, he didn't have an immediate excuse. Then, the worst possible thing happened. His phone buzzed. A message popped up on the screen. "Olivia, so, when are you coming back?" Silence. He didn't even try to deny it. He just sat there staring at the screen, his jaw tightening. I felt like my chest had caved in, like all the air had been sucked out of the room. I stood up, grabbed my bag. "So that's it then?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper.